You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
This is it, gentlemen. Your big breaking TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to dissect horror films, both old and new. Those of you that have been listening to our current season dedicated to the late, great Wes Craven will know that we've been venturing through the nightmare years, as we call his middle era of his film work, which was sandwiched between basically the way we're looking at it from A Nightmare on Elm Street right through to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And because he was so synonymous to A Nightmare on Elm Street during this period, we're also kind of delving into the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We've obviously spoken about the first film, and we have delved into what was the unique Freddy's Revenge, the sequel that followed. And now we're about to venture once further into the dream world of Freddy Krueger and talk about the third installment that came along, which was called Dream Warriors. And before we do so, I should introduce myself. I'm the host for the podcast. My name is Saul Muerte. Joining me once again for the franchise discussions is Oscar Jack. Welcome aboard, Oscar.
Hey, it's good to be back.
So last time round we had a very kind of different experience to Freddy, and those that may have kind of come to know Freddy, and maybe some, even myself included, realizing as we've gone through these franchise discussions, there's a few of them that if I haven't watched them, I've only watched them like once maybe, but the icon of who Freddy Krueger is something that's transcended across the years. We're talking like, close to 35, 40 years since the original film came out. Look, he's become a slasher in his own right. But interestingly, the second one was a very, very different kettle of fish. And as we spoke about in the last time we chatted around that movie, could have been a very, very different franchise on our hands if Wes Craven didn't come back on board, which he did for the third one. And that wasn't to say that he came back to direct. He came back to write this screenplay, essentially. Now, I think originally, and I think I was kind of saying stuff in the last podcast, I can't remember why he wasn't involved. But I do remember that when he was originally approached by Bob Shaye with the idea of where to take it next, as in following the first film, he liked the idea of this kind of shared dream experience with a group of people that were in a psychiatric ward. And so that's the kernel of what this next movie will be. And that's what he was banging around with. He didn't actually get around to completing the script until, or kind of delving back into it until he had the option to kind of come back into the fold again and let's just say redirect the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise back to where he had originally envisioned it. Because, as you and I have quite rightly said, the second one does beat to its own drum and goes in a very different direction. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So before we, so he does come back on board for that, as I said. And before we, as I said, delve into the plot structure, which is tends to be the way we kind of navigate our way through our discussions. Can you just tell our listeners when you first experienced this film and what was your, not without giving too much away, your reaction to it when you first saw the Dream Warriors film?
I think I probably saw the Dream Warriors not too long after the original. Okay. Caught it on TV, probably caught it halfway through. Actually, I know exactly the moment that I turned over to it, which is the first time that Patricia Arquette's character pulls Nancy into the dream. It was the Freddy worm the Freddy snake.
The phallic worm, yes.
Was the first
Wow.
that very distinctive. I remember switching it over and being like, what is this?
what?
And I think I don't think I watched more than that at that time, but it was one of those things that the next time I kind of sat down and started watching through them that I realized, that's what this is from.
Yeah.
And it's like pure, like, I remember I remember that, and I remember the song.
Yeah. The
That's
Doc and theme song. Yeah.
Oh, Dream Warriors, like your 80s, like Go Get 'Em. You can almost see the Saturday morning cartoon with that as a theme song of all of the the kids in the psych ward battling Freddy week after week.
Yeah, with their superpowers.
With their superpowers. I'm honestly shocked that never happened. Maybe we can get something going.
You never know. It's not too late. They keep talking about bringing him back.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny. So basically, all right. So I was saying this to you off record, but I'll say it again for the sake of the podcast. But this is definitely the franchise outside of the original. This is definitely the one I've watched the most. I don't know whether that's entirely on purpose or not, or just through fault of the fact that it tends to be one I've gravitated towards. I'm gonna by the end of our franchise discussions, I'll ask the question to you, and I'll ask it of myself, of which order we kind of prefer these movies in. So with that in mind, I don't know necessarily at this stage if this is a front runner or not. I'm just literally just pointing out that it just so happens to be one that I've watched the most outside of the first one. Yeah. But the couple of things that it does boast, obviously, before we do get into the plot, or one of the big things, obviously, Robert Englund comes back to play Freddy, and as he has done in all of the installments of the franchise, with the exception of the remake, and he's so identified with the role of Freddy Krueger that it's hard for people to see anyone play Freddy outside of that. And that's often when you look up stuff recently online, is the ongoing eternal argument around that Freddy will probably die when Robert Englund passes or shuffles off this mortal coil. And that's to be debated, obviously. But interestingly, with this one, we also get the return of Nancy Thompson, the character Nancy Thompson, but also with the return of Heather Langenkamp playing her again, which is cool. Like, we want to, when you have a franchise, you kind of do want to have that kind of ongoing kind of connection with some character of one way, shape, or form that kind of carries you through and keeps that narrative ticking.
Passing the torch along.
Yeah, that's right, and this very much is that. And we'll talk about her character a bit more as we kind of delve into the plot. But yeah, it was refreshing to have her back. I felt.
Well, there's something that I noticed before we jump into the plot, taking us down yet another little coal to the sack for a moment.
Yeah,
it struck me that this is essentially what Halloween took like 12 sequels to do, which was to cut out the stuff in between.
Yeah.
The ones that the creators didn't like and make a sequel to the original.
Yeah.
Because I meant Freddy's Revenge, which is like the most cliched like 80s sequel title in the world. Is not, we don't get any mentions of Jesse or Lisa or any of their hijinks. we just come straight back with Nancy, and we get her dad back, and
sorry, I forgot to mention John Saxon's back.
one in such a great moment of I mean, this is really wild, and directed by Chuck Russell, who is a director who I immensely enjoy. Who did he directed the remake of The Blob, which is one of my favorite horror films.
Yes.
And he also directed The Mask.
He did.
Three incredible, what a triple feature to watch.
They were
all very special effects heavy films in very different ways.
Yes. But I mean, unfortunately, he does then go on to do Eraser, the Arnie film, followed by Bless the Child, the very forgettable Kim Basinger kind of psychological kind of horror thriller thing, and then The Scorpion King.
It's strange. It's strange. I mean, what happened? Because 3 very strong movies. This is one of the best of nightmare films.
Now, I also want to just on that note. Do you remember back on when we were talking about the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I said to you there was a film starring Dennis Quaid, and it was about basically it's based on a guy entering the dreams, essentially. It was called Dreamscape, and it was a flop at the movies, and because of that, I want to say it was Universal or somebody who had the rights to that. I could be wrong with the distributor of that, and I really apologize if I'm saying the wrong ones. No, it was Fox. I want to say it was 20th Century Fox. Sorry, I think. And when Bob Shea was banging around trying to sell the original Nightmare on Elm Street, they approached 20th Century Fox, and they basically said no to it because of the failure of Dreamscape. And Dreamscape was directed by Chuck Russell.
Right.
How things come full circle is quite interesting. And
that is very interesting.
But there you go. To carry on the vision of Freddy.
Well, shall we jump into the story of it all?
Let's start dissecting it. So we are picking up apparently the year after the events of the previous film, even though we kind of are bypassing it a little bit. But we pick up with the character of Kristen Parker, who is played by Patricia Arquette in one of her earlier films. And this is again similar to the first film and the original film, I should say, and also even the sequel, where we pick up on the dream sequence, and we're provided with who will be our protagonist. In this case, is the Kristen character, and she's been chased by Freddy in her dreams. In this sequence, she wakes up after that kind of little intro, it's a very kind of short sequence, but by this point we kind of know that the points that are kind of that we are supposed to kind of rip through, and they quickly go through that in order for her to get to the wake up scene. She goes to the bathroom, and that's where she gets attacked by Freddy again, who comes out and he slices her wrists with a razor. So this leads her mum to think that she's suicidal, and so she's then taken to hospital, and she then kind of basically kind of gets introduced to another group of kids, and there's a very kind of confrontational thing that's going on where she's fighting the orderlies during this, and that's kind of in the background where she's kind of been brought into the hospital, and and it's because she doesn't want to go to sleep, and they kind of force her to go to sleep by drugging her. Whilst that's going on, we're kind of being told the story of who she is and her background through the male doctor, who is Dr. Neil Gordon, and it's also another female doctor as well. That's we get the impression she's kind of higher up, but they're also talking about a new psychologist that's coming in.
Crack hot. Yeah, a real renegade.
Yeah, she kind of doesn't go with the rules.
This mystique of this expert coming in.
Yeah, that's right. And the whole thing, I think he's even saying, isn't she a bit young to be kind of coming in on, blah, blah, blah. So we're kind of going, all right, so who those who haven't seen the film are really kind of maybe going, who are they going to be referring to? It is obviously revealed that this is Nancy Thompson.
With her very refined streak of grey, white hair that she got in her own sleep clinic.
Yeah.
In the first movie.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I think I may have seen that. I may have seen little bits of this before I saw the original.
Right.
I remember first seeing Nancy like that and being like, is she trying to play older? Like, just giving her that in terms of because and the way that she's introduced is great because Patricia Arquette's character has gone nuts in one of the rooms, and she's got a knife held out to the doctors, and Nancy is in the doorway saying the exact right things.
Yeah.
That she knows what she's going through.
That's
she
right.
kind of walks through confidently, takes her in her arms, wearing her wonderful 80s power suit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our big orderly who we've got, young Larry Fishburne.
Larry Fishburne.
When he was still Larry.
Larry.
It's always very exciting.
It's always exciting. Yeah, he is when we see him as Larry Fishburne. I always think about it because obviously this is so he was Larry Fishburne in Apocalypse Now. I don't know at what point he turned from Larry to Lawrence.
Well, I think he was still Larry in Event Horizon.
Was he?
I think that may have been one of like one of the last Larrys. I think
one of the last.
It's been a little while since I've seen it, but
I didn't realize that. I would have thought he was Lawrence by that point, but I'm happy to stand corrected. Yeah, but yeah, this is Larry days. Anyway, yeah, and yeah. So you're right. So we get the introduction of Nancy Thompson. She calms down. The Kristen character, and she, in that instance, she not only is she kind of proving that she knows her stuff, but she kind of proves her mettle, I guess, and kind of makes the doctors kind of second guess what they originally were thinking. Oh, maybe she's not so. Maybe we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and maybe she's got some stuff to her that we should kind of take note of. This is where then Nancy gets introduced to the rest of the group that will be, which will form the Dream Warriors.
And we've had a moment where the doctors kind of walk down, and we've gotten like a little taste of a few of them.
Yeah.
Of a good one down, a good walk and talk down the hallways. We've met a couple of them, and we get to meet the rest of them and reintroduce a lot of the ones who we have briefly met as Nancy goes and does her rounds and sees what she's working with.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm looking at the list and I'm forgetting who you may have to remind me, but I'm forgetting who Philip is. Apparently he's the sleepwalker dude. Okay, yes, that's right. So we have him,
the puppet man.
The puppet man, that's right. Yeah. Then we get Kincaid, who's the tough kind of kid from the Bronx, kind of attitude, very violent kind of outbursts. We get Jennifer, who's the one that kind of is living in TV land. dreams of being an actress. We have Will, who's the kid that's in the wheelchair, apparently from a suicide attempt. We have Taryn, played by Jennifer Rubin, another familiar face, and she's the drug addict. We get Joey, who's this kid who's just doesn't talk. He's mute because apparently he's too traumatized from whatever's occurred. So that is the group. That's the group. Yeah, cool. Then we get, after that kind of introductory bit, we get another dream sequence for Kristen where she's attacked by Freddy again. And in this point, we get, this is where I don't remember, I said to you at the end of the second one, part of a good sequel is where you live within the same rules, but you add a little something different. The little something different here is that Kristen has the ability to pull people into her own dreams, as long as they are in their dream state themselves, giving her kind of a very unique ability, but a decent kind of a hook to kind of then be able to kind of combine their dreams so that they can unite together against Freddy. Essentially, this is what we're getting ourselves down to. So she, in this point, she brings Nancy into her dream because she's starting to get eaten by this kind of big, giant, penis-looking worm. And it's Nancy kind of comes in
as she's gone back into the house.
That's it. The house. That's right. That's within.
Yes.
You're familiar with? Is it 14? I want to say it's 14, 16, something or other.
14, 27.
14, 27. Yeah, you probably.
Yeah.
Actually, I probably should know that. Anyway, so within the house, and so it's kind of all kind of crumbling and decrepit, which kind of gives it kind of a cool look. So Nancy comes in, rescues Kristen from big phallic penis, and they manage to escape. From that.
And they have this. The snake has a great moment because she gets pulled straight in. She grabs a piece of sharded metal and stabs the worm in the eye.
Yeah.
And once they kind of got away, the worm says, "You." And she, there's this great kind of zoom on Nancy as she says, "Oh my God," which is what we want in that horror movie. When she thought she still thought he was
dead.
He was defeated.
Yes.
That moment of realization of he's still alive. This is still happening. Is so fun, and it really is. This little moment is a real flex of like of special effects and of like the worm itself, but also like the destruction of their house. It shows itself as this isn't sort of the janky Freddy's Revenge. This is like we got Wes Craven back as as writer and
that's right.
I think Chuck Russell's kind of seasoned hand, kind of stuff that he played with in the less than successful previous films. Yeah, it's a real. You can just feel that this is a really great mix. Yes. And bringing all those elements that we want from that first one, carrying it over into it, having I think it's like 60% the original and 40% new. That brings you into now a group of people who can hopefully with the same kind of fighting spirit, although they're separated at the moment, as we see in their group therapy. All of them are sleep deprived. All of them are kind of scattered and incredibly agitated by the female doctor, who's a little Nurse Ratchety.
Yes, she
One
is.
Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She's the non-believer. She's the shutdowner. No one else kind of follows them along.
No. And I guess that's kind of what's kind of cool is like from the outside, if you didn't know the true connection that unites them, you are led to believe that they could very well fit within a mental institute and have these kind of their own trauma backgrounds that are just so disconnected from each other without, as I said, not without knowing the truth. And then just to go back as well to what you were saying about that great moment when Nancy realizes that Freddie's still very much alive, is such a great moment because in her own way, she did defeat Freddie. And I think the way to look at that is that, he truly did die in that confrontation, but he is an eternal demon spirit that will continue to haunt and plague people's nightmares. And so it's kind of interesting that he would still, I love the fact that he would still live on, but in other people's nightmares. It's just in that one, it happened to, in the confrontation he had with her, it had reached this conclusion. The only way she would ever get brought back into that world is to be physically brought back into that world by another character. Moments, and that's what it does. I think it's such a great way to reunite these two. I love that moment. Really, really, really love that moment. So we have this moment, and then we. I think there's the next bit is just kind of a bit more.
We're getting to know the characters a bit more. There's the kid in the wheelchair who we learn a little bit more about him. He is playing Dungeons and Dragons, or I think it's called something else. It's like Mystics and Magic. It's very much tabletop kind of stuff where he's playing with a couple of the others, and
that's right.
We slowly kind of we're learning what makes all of these people tick and what they kind of where they go for their strength, for their defense. And cutting over to Nancy and the what's the male doctor's name?
I want to say he was it was Neil. Was it Neil? I did say it.
Neil. Yes.
Oh no, I've lost it now. I thought his name was Neil. Neil Gordon. Yeah, Dr. Neil Gordon.
Dr. Neil Gordon. So we've got Nancy and Dr. Neil Gordon having dinner. Having dinner and talking about, diving into the dreams, because now it's not just Nancy's English teacher talking about dreams. Now she's studied, and she they're all talking about what dreams mean to them. And
that's right. And that's
the whole kind of.
That was always the kernel. That was always the kernel of the Freddy stuff. The Nightmare on Elm Street was the psychology. What I always resonated with it was the psychology behind dreams, and what makes dreams, and why we dream, and the fact that there's this boogeyman that lives within these dreams is just kind of the icing on the cake, essentially. That kind of evokes the fear that we have, that we all have these fears, and that's what it feeds off. Or Freddie feeds off. So it's and you're right. So this and it's great having that kind of dialogue between the two where they are kind of discussing each other's thoughts and
also so early in the film. It because that first film has done the legwork. We can immediately jump into so much with them already kind of know, like at least Nancy already knows who she's dealing with. Whereas the at least the typical format would be we'd kind of hold out. Maybe Freddie isn't back. Maybe it's just in their heads. But I love how much they bring Freddie kind of into the center. And it just feels like this movie just feels packed. Because there's so many characters, and they all kind of they all get moments to shine, and Freddie's kind of the most center stage as we've ever seen him, but he's still not dominating the spotlight. because
No.
we get our first kind of kill in the next sequence with the puppet obsessed
Philip character,
the puppet enthusiast. As one of his puppets kind of faces morphs, this kind of stop motion, and it grows claws and cuts its own strings and drops to the ground, and we get these great little like Freddy puppet moving along that slowly grows into full Freddy standing over his bed, and we get just an incredible moment of him kind of cutting into him, pulling out the sort of the veins of the tendons, turning him in like visceral, him being held up by his own flesh as this flesh puppet is sleepwalking, and everyone knows he sleepwalks, so they don't think anything about it as he's kind of led up to the tallest tower in the hospital and flung off in full view of the other patients.
I look, it's such a great scene, this bit. I really enjoyed this bit. I love the whole imagery behind it, and the metaphor of literally like Freddy treating all of his victims as puppets, and playing on that, and like the visual kind of component, as you said, of using the veins as the strings to kind of lure Philip to his death it's just a good moment, and he's so just not in control of his actions at that point. It's a great sequence.
And we get the mute boy is the first one who sees it.
Yes.
And pulls the wheelchair guy out of bed to show him, and goes running out, and he just is running down the hallway with a tray, banging on doors. It's like that's so great. Like that's such a good character moment, because it gives the most drama and the most action for a character who is the most cut off from everyone else, and you show that how much of a barrier, how traumatized he is, that he isn't able to speak even when he's trying to save the life of one of his friends.
That's right. I really
you also see how far he goes, like that even with all of their different traumas, they're not helpless. They still can fight. And it's only with them kind of all together, kind of screaming out the window, watching, that they're sort of realize they're being picked off one by one.
I really like the Joey character too. I think he is a strong character arc that they use with him in this one. I enjoyed that, and we'll get to the end of that kind of arc as we go through the story plotline. But like it's a great little moment, and it's quickly followed by the second death scene too, because we get the television obsessed character Jennifer, and they're all still a bit fragmented at this point, and she's kind of on her own in like the TV viewing room, and
burning herself with cigarettes.
Yeah, that's right, as you do. And Larry, a good old Larry Fishburne, gives her the benefit of doubt, kind of leaves her alone watching TV, even though he's like, you shouldn't really be in here. So she soon falls asleep, and then we get that whole kind of moment where Freddy kind of comes out of the TV, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," and picks her up and shoves head straight through the TV screen, which is where they find her body,
just hanging there.
Which you've got to kind of go, all right. It's a great scene. It's one of the campiest moments in the film. But from an outside perspective, like from somebody within, like one of the doctors looking at it, you kind of got to go, how the hell did she commit suicide doing that? Like it doesn't seem possible. really.
No. Well, it's the theme in the Nightmare series of adults just looking the other way. Just,
it really
like,
was.
If you just need to get some sleep. That's all you need.
They just need sleep. Yeah. So is this the point where Nancy's methods are put under question, or does that come a bit later?
Not quite yet. First, we get the funeral scene where the good doctor bumps into a nun. Sort of asks, what faith do you follow? And he says, science, I suppose.
Yes.
It's a sad choice.
Yes. So under the guise of Sister Mary Helena who's posing herself as, and Dr. Neil's the only one that sees her vision.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which is interesting. But yes, there is that interaction. And then we get Nancy and Neil deciding to, based on the fact that, on the theory that obviously Freddie's very much alive and well, and Nancy knows this, but she thinks and the abilities that Kristen has, she wants to kind of do a group hypnosis so that they can share that dream experience and discover. This is a bit where I don't know how they tap into it, but they kind of realize that they've got powers.
Well, I think it's like, where do you go in your dreams?
Yes, that's right.
And so it's like, I'm a wizard in my dreams. It's like I'm a badass.
Yeah.
She pulls out. I'm bad. She like pulls out 2 switchblades.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very cheesy moment, and could have been way much more iconic if they'd have given a bit more thought, I think. But it is what it is. But this is where they work out, and obviously Kincaid's the strength. He's got strength on his side. He's always like super, super strong, and all the stuff that comes with it. But they do this kind of group hypnosis.
My mistake. This isn't where they have their powers. This is where they first they try it out.
Oh, right.
Joey's been let off.
That's right. Yeah. He gets, because he's always had his eye on one of the other nurses.
One of the nurses, yes, and we get, I think, our first boobs of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, we do. It's taken up to the 3rd installment to get the what is typical of a slasher film to have the boobs.
Really interesting, and as well as Joey's really the only because I think the only boobs in the next one are also for Joey.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
which is great because it's like it's related to the character. Like we've got all of this kind of crazy stuff. It would be a bit weird if there wasn't nudity for some of these teens. For some of these, particularly teen boys. Like, you'd think there might be something a bit strange in the water if none of them were having dreams about naked, beautiful women.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it kind of comes with the territory, really. But it's as you said, it's taken until the 3rd one to go there, which is interesting. And you're right. So we get Joey wandering off. He's lured by the nurse character, who then decides to get busy, and disrobes and starts to kind of seductively kind of go along with his fantasies, shall we say, and then we excuse me, sorry. Then we I'm trying to wonder when Freddie actually reveals to be the nurse at that point.
I believe it's when her tongue
Oh yeah,
comes out of her mouth and is
Yeah.
maybe 3 meters long
yeah, that's
and
right.
all cracked and boiled. And
Yes,
he realizes that the ties that he's been tied down on the bed with have turned into tongues that are like
that's right.
writhing and
Ah,
screaming.
yeah, and then like the bed falls away and he's kind of
falls away and he's above.
yeah,
And then it's around then. This is actually when they all kind of say what they like in their dreams and what they do, because that whole kind of group therapy starts to kind of break down and starts burning through. And I think our nurse Ratchet stand-in kind of interrupts it.
yeah, that's right. But it's
Find out that Joey's in a coma.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he doesn't wake up out of it. So this is so not only is Nurse Ratchet character not happy with this going, against the protocol, but the result of it, that there's a kid in a coma. So yeah, this is where then Nancy's methods are put into question. But interestingly, we also have Neil's he's confronted by the sister character again, and she gives a bit of background to Freddy's past, saying
he's
that
lured up to the hospital's abandoned wing, and
yes, that's right. So it's told that Freddy is the son of a young nun who was accidentally locked in a room with hundreds of mental patients who raped her continually. And the only way
over a weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
She was forgotten about.
Yes. Yeah. And we do get to see that scene, but not in this movie. And so excuse me again. So she also mentions the only way to stop Freddy is to lay his bones to rest. So they need to find his bones and put him to rest.
Yes. So they need to find someone who knows where he died.
Know where Freddy was buried. John Saxon.
Beautiful, like just barely standing up.
Yeah.
The character is just crumpled at a bar, still wearing, still a cop. He's not completely fallen from grace, but he's stubbled and you can just tell he's not had a great time since his wife mysteriously got dragged into the mattress.
See, and this is the thing, what I kind of enjoyed about his story arc for his character from the last one is that he's pretty much picked up the mantle of his wife too, and he's become an alcoholic. And so he's really kind of let go, but he's turned from somebody this was what I really enjoyed about his character, is that he's turned from somebody that was a noble, a hard-boiled kind of police detective who took no shit, to a bit of a coward. He's a bit scared of what he cannot explain, and that comes into effect with his decisions as well. And he doesn't want to go along with it. He doesn't want to be he doesn't want a bar of what they are planning on doing, and so he won't go along basically with their plans. So with that, then Nancy goes back to the hospital, and this is where she finds out that Kristen's been sedated. So she's gone under, and while Neil tries to keep convincing the dad, Nancy's dad, to kind of come back and help them. So Nancy, on knowing that Kristen's gone under, she then tries to kind of get the group hypnosis again to try and help Kristen, because they basically know that they kind of need her to kind of do to connect in the dream world essentially. But if she's under, she's going to be in trouble from Freddy. This is where we actually get the next couple of kills, and I forget which way round it is, but we get the killing of Will, which is the handicapped kid with the magic powers, and I want to say he dies first, and it is a bit lame because he goes, "I can do magic," and he does this whole thing of zapping Freddy with some green kind of lightning bolts, only for Freddy to kind of basically go, "Yeah, thanks, and kills him. So he was always a bit of the weak character, really, of the group, wasn't he? To be fair, which is a shame because they could have done so much more with that, considering he was handicapped. And in dreams, you don't necessarily you're not bound to the chair. You know, he could have been anything. They could have gone in a lot better direction anyway.
Yes. He could have been the valiant, still staying with the fantasy theme. He could have been, the noble knight. He could have been the action hero. But it would have been great to have more with the Dream Warriors.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah.
Every time I do watch it, it's like I really do want the Saturday morning cartoon. I want them all together. I want them like they've all got their powers, to really play and expand with that kind.
Just do it already. Yeah.
But we also get because Nancy's dad and
Neil
and Dr. Neil.
Yeah.
He's able to finally convince it as we're kind of cutting back and forth.
Yeah.
They quickly stop off at a church and he fills up some holy water. And
right. Yeah.
They're taken to the junkyard as Nancy's dad kind of finds the takes him to where they've hidden the bones, hidden in the trunk of one of these many cars.
Yes.
As they know, and it's like the Neil's such a great character. Because he really does. I don't know, especially with these kinds of movies, it's so frustrating when no one believes anyone for the entire movie.
Yeah,
which is such a cliche, and it's always really nice, particularly with a sequel. First film, that's good. You get a lot of dramatic tension with that way, but with a sequel, we've already done that. We want you to be like, yes, we believe you. Let's that's how you expand on this.
Yeah,
is by kind of when they first have their first group therapy, and he gets to experience it, and he's completely converted. Because he's seen how real it is, and he's seen the this Freddy guy is
yes,
probably behind the death of his patients who he cares about so much, and because he's at an end, he doesn't know what to do, because he's failed two of them. When he finally gives over to Nancy and says, if you've got a way that can help them, I want it to be the case.
Yeah.
But you kind of boiled down, our Dream Warriors kind of boiled down to kind of 3 or 4. So we lose
Taryn as well. So, I kind of like her death scene. It really is because so obviously and she's packing a few punches early on, and you can't. And
she's bad. She's got a big 80s mohawk and her two switchblades, and we've seen her with an orderly earlier that she's been getting drugs from.
Yes.
So we know that she was a junkie.
Yeah.
And that's what Freddy comes after her with, as his knife hands turn into syringe hands, which is a terrifying image, especially for people who aren't a fan of needles.
Yes.
As he injects into her and she ODs in her dream. It's quite awful. But a great death.
It is a great death, yeah. And I guess that's the thing, and this arcs back to what I like about Freddy is and I keep saying this, but the way he either taps into your fears or your weaknesses, and obviously her weakness is that she's an addict, and he uses that to his advantage to destroy her. So, excuse me. So he's it's a really really kind of cool moment. Sorry, my throat keeps catching. and I'm trying to remember what the line is that he says to her as he does it, because it's something like about "here's your fix," or
Yeah.
yeah, something was like it's like going back to what we were saying about how this is where he becomes a bit like the one-liners kind of come thick and fast with his characters, and the camp factor kind of comes to the forefront. That was first kind of played on in Freddy's Revenge. Yeah, so it's yeah. I can't remember what he says now, and I'm sure there'll be people kind of screaming at me as they listen to it who know it, but my mind has just gone blank. So apologies. Anyway, but it's a great death scene anyway, and she.
Anyway, I think I've got the line here somewhere. That's it. What a rush!
What a rush! That's it.
What a rush! As he's getting off, as he's like, fingernails deep.
Yeah. That's it. That's right. Oh, it's a good line. So you're right. We're left with the three because Nancy is able to unite with Kristen and Kincaid. As they
Kincaid, who's like walked through walls. He's that strong. He's just strong. Like he's able to just bust down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Through the cardboard wall.
Yeah.
The point is the three of them unite. They try to rescue Joey, but find Freddy is still too powerful. But this is the point where he realizes that something's going on. His remains have been found. So we kind of then come back to what you were saying about Nancy's dad, who I've forgotten his name again, but let's just say John Saxon, and Dr. Neil, who have found the remains in the boot of one of the cars, from memory, isn't it?
Yes.
And so that's when they decide that they need to kind of bury his remains. But this is where the skeleton comes to life. Of the remaining bones of Freddy in true Ray Harryhausen kind of
pure Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah,
totally. And I used to love that image as a kid. I love the whole kind of skeleton kind of stop animation stuff. One a bit of a favorite of mine. And he basically kind of starts to attack Donald, and he kills Donald in this. That's right.
Yes.
Is Nancy's father.
Throws him across and impales him on a piece of shard.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a moment where just prior to that, he so as this is about to happen, he tries to make a run for it, doesn't he? But then then Freddy appears and throws him across, as you said, and impales him. Leaving Dr. Neil to kind of try and face Freddy on his own.
Well, Neil gets knocked out.
Yeah.
And the skeleton starts to pour dirt. Starts to shovel dirt back onto him.
Yes.
Cheering triumphantly with these bony fists held in the air. Which shows us that we realize when we jump back into the dream that Freddy is singular.
Yes.
That he can only, because that was Freddy kind of coming back into his bones. Because when we jump back into the dream, they've gotten Joey out of there, and they're in another part of the dream. They're walking down this hall of mirrors.
Yes.
A great image, and then Freddy kind of appears in all of them.
Yes.
Little bits of him kind of grabbing and pulling all of them kind of into the mirrors, which is so great. Even though I just said that he is singular, but not in the dream. He's always a singular focus, a singular action. He's doing an action, which is why they're able to kind of fight him, and this is where we finally get Joey's power.
Yeah. He's hidden power.
He screams and shatters all of the mirrors. He screams, and it just shatters everything, and we get the first line from him saying, "Wow, did I do that?"
Yes.
Which is so good.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. It's like those are just the victories that we love watching.
Yeah. That's it.
Which isn't the ultimate triumph. It's the overcoming of those personal hurdles. And we get our they're kind of all cheering together, and we get our little a Wizard of Oz moment as Sparkling, Nancy's father, kind of comes in, basically saying, "I've crossed over," I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
You were right, and I love you, princess. And
tell your sister you're right. Sorry, wrong movie.
Yes.
So we get that kind of whole moment, but then the twist.
But then it's revealed.
Yeah, there's actually Freddy in disguise.
Pesky Freddy, who stabs our Nancy.
Yeah,
in the stomach.
What the fuck? And then goes to turn on Kristen to try and kill her. At which point Nancy kind of stands up.
She does her Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
He thought she was dead, but she wasn't. She jumps up behind him and stabs him with his own glove. As Neil's kind of like pulled himself out and throws the bones down and throws the holy water, and then we get this great effect of Freddy with the light beams coming out of him.
Yes. It is cool.
Which I'm trying to think of what that reminds me of being.
The shards of light coming out. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're saying that I'm getting an image of something else as well, but I'm not sure what. It's from.
Yeah, I have the vaguest feeling, and I might be wrong, but I might just be thinking of Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen.
Oh dear.
But that might not be the case. I think about that movie a lot.
I like it there. We'll put it there for the moment. And then that's right. And so then he throws the
crucifix
thing in, too. And this looks like Freddy's destroyed, and Nancy wakes up from her wounds while Kristen's kind of embracing her, and it's basically saying something about having sweet dreams, I think. As Nancy passes over, essentially, this is a death scene. We then have the climax of the film where we're at Nancy's funeral, and this is where Neil sees the Sister Mary again, and he follows along, and he goes behind this tombstone that she follows, and it's led that she's Amanda Kruger, so. Revealing that she was Freddy's mother, and that not only was she a spirit, but she was Freddy's mother, and so the story that she was telling was her own story. And then we have the ending where Dr. Neil goes to bed, and he has, for some reason, a miniature of the Elm Street house as his nightstand.
Yes. Though I think it's the one that Kristen is making in the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
because it's she makes it out of like paddle pop sticks.
Yeah,
and paper mache.
Yeah.
And next to it is the I think it's the like Indonesian dream statue that Nancy was so fond of.
That's right. Yeah.
And we get the little light turning on in the window of the toy house.
Yes. And he doesn't realize it's turned on, while he's sleeping.
Which is the you can tell it's like Wes is like, okay, we're making it a franchise, but we're not doing to turn the actress into a rubber doll and pull her through the window of a door. Like, let's do it like maybe a little classier with a little, something a little subtler than that, or a bus driving off, or the car with the. It's very small, and it's the most understated ending, I think.
It's deliberately underplayed, and for good reason. It's done in a way that you kind of go, okay, this is going to keep going, but in a good way. And that's the end of the movie. So that's how we kind of come out. And again, so as usual, before we cast our thoughts, just I'm looking at my notes, and the only thing I didn't kind of touch on, other than the whole, and I'm going to say that bit, but the important thing was one of the co-screenwriters was none other than Frank Darabont.
Right.
He became famous, obviously, more so from doing The Shawshank Redemption, followed by The Green Mile, so turning two Stephen King novel into films. He would then later on go on to do The Mist, which was back in 2007, and it's still viewed as quite highly, that film, and it's incredibly fucking bleak. And maybe that's why it is deemed quite highly. And then famously taking on The Walking Dead in the first initial season, before kind of, I'm not going to go into too much detail with it, but before he got shown the door, and has been ongoing with that kind of ever since.
And also that Chuck Russell and he worked together on The Blob.
Yes, they did. That's right.
He was the writer for the script of that.
He was. And he has done a lot of written stuff. Like he's writing more so than he's directing. So like he did the screenplay for The Fly 2 as well. And a couple of young Indiana Jones Chronicles TV series. He did the screenplay for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in there too. Was there anyone? No, that's probably it from the ones to kind of mention. But yeah, that's kind of interesting that he was one of the writers in that. So obviously, and you can kind of tell that it's got his mark, And what I mean by that, not that he's particularly identifiable, but he's obviously a very solid writer, and that combined with the vision of Wes and Chuck combined, the trio kind of formed arguably a really impressive entry into the franchise. The other thing I'm just going to add to that is that when Wes Craven basically did say that when he was to come on board, he wanted to not just have a reimagining of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but he wanted to have something that would take it to the next level. Do you think he succeeded in that?
I think he 100% did.
Yeah.
I think it's this kind of sequel that you want.
Yeah.
It succeeds in being a sequel in the ways that the previous entry does not.
Yes.
We only have two actors, not including Freddie himself.
Yeah, Robert Englund.
Not including Robert Englund. We get two returning cast, the two most important cast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
kind of the two surviving cast of that first one, and in a way that that I love for particularly with horrors, when you see how those characters have carried on, how the father is kind of crumpled, and how Nancy is kind of resisted and stood even taller, and now she's even stronger. Bringing this passing of the torch of this continuation and building on the mythology of bringing Kristen in with this new dream power. Nancy could bring Freddie out of dreams, but Kristen can pull others into her.
Yeah, which is such a great twist. Yeah, on that.
It's all there.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
It's where you would want it to go without it just feeling like a retread. Which is what so many of those of the endless franchise movies become. Because it's a safe and incredibly boring bet. Whereas this, he had the team, and they had the cachet, and the first and even the second had made enough money where they were like, Robert Shea of New Line, open arms.
Like, yeah. It's like, yes.
Yes, bring him back. Like, that's what we want. We want to capture some of that lightning again. And I think they really succeed in a way that few horror sequels have.
Yeah, I agree. This was really what was the benchmark that they would have wanted to have, and to go back to what I said at the beginning, like, this is a reason why I do often go back to watching this movie, because it is a good journey. It does carry on. It does carry on that journey. We're given some different characters. We're given a different approach to the dream world and stuff that can happen within the dream world too. And a bit of room for Freddy to have fun within that world too. It's a really good entry I found. So with that, I mean, we're, as I said in previous podcasts, we'll cast our thoughts across the entire franchise at the end. So we're not going to kind of say where we place this one until we get to the very end. So we'll just cut to the question I always ask is, do you think it still stands the test of time today? Because it's still fairly old now. Do you think it stands the test of time, and or is it still quite immersed in that nostalgic kind of area, which some newcomers may come to it and not really appreciate it because of that?
No, I think particularly when you watch this and the first as like a double bill.
Yeah.
I think it is such a great thing to go from that because particularly with people who haven't seen the first one before.
Yes.
Or seen the second one, to rewatch the first and go straight into the third one. Is it's got such strong continuation. It's got a real logical continuation, which is you've invested with these characters and you get to dive back into them, and I mean, both of them die at the end. Both of our returning.
That's the thing, like So it really is in that sense passing on the torch. If they were to go on, which we know we do, it really is that kind of whole. It's like they're bold enough to kill off these characters, where do you go from now? Well, we'll find that out in future podcasts as we delve further into the franchise. So would you recommend it?
Yes, big time.
Yeah, me too.
It's particularly for someone who's never seen it. I think it's an incredibly exciting thing for people to watch.
Yeah,
and it's got those moments of it was made in '87.
Yeah, it's what I also add is like they give enough little bit of background to Freddy without going too much into detail, which unfortunately a future installment does go there because it's got room to go there. But I question whether that is the right decision to make, and we'll have that discussion. And as I said, when we come to that movie. But I liked the fact that it just erred on the right side of just giving a little bit more without too much. Enjoyed. Cool, man. Well, I think on that note, we're done and dusted for the current discussions on our Nightmare on Elm Street franchise discussions. And in this instance was the third installment, which was called Dream Warriors. Tempted to play out with a little snippet of Doc, and we'll see what I do when I come to edit. Until then, I'm your host for the podcast series. My name is Saul Muerte. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining me, Oscar Jack.
It's prime time, bitch.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com. or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.